Today's review will be Ever17, The Out of Infinity. Now, this is one of the more earlier complex visual novels. And by complex, I mean that in most visual novels, you have, say, a common route. And then you have branching paths. And usually those branching paths are tied to a heroine. And that heroine's route is supposed to stand on its own. But not in visual novels like this. In this visual novel, all the heroine routes and all the smaller routes, they all come together at the end with a final route. This is done in other games like Clanad, Little Busters, Rewrite, Key Stuff. They like to do this after Canon and Air. They kind of just started liking this stuff. G Senjo Namao, Love Love Alternative, It's done a lot of the time, and it works really well because it basically makes it so all the themes in the game come together. And at the time of this release, this was probably the only visual novel that was worth anyone's time. So yes, I'm already telling you it's a good visual novel. That being said, how does it hold up today? Well, first, this review will have spoilers in it, but it won't have spoilers right away. I'm not gonna split it into two videos like Rewrite. I'm going to do one part, which is summarizing the game, and then the other part I will go into the routes themselves, and I'll warn you, so in case you become interested and want to read it yourself, that you won't get spoiled. In Ever17, you play as a band of teenagers. Well, you play as two guys interacting with a band of teenagers or young adults. And basically what happens is they visit a water park called Lemieux. Lemieux, yes. I'm not sure if that's actually how it's pronounced, but that's how the Japanese actors pronounce it. Anyway, they visit a water park for, leisure or whatever. And, something bad happens. This disaster happens where the water park starts flooding, and they all get trapped inside it. And the story is about the several days they have to spend inside this water park, and trying to figure out how to get out, how to contact help, and just trying to keep their cool. And actually, it's kind of funny. And most, I hate to generalize American stuff, but in most American stuff, if characters were put in the same situation, they would try to probably make it really overdramatic, right? But in this, it's not that overdramatic most of the time. In fact, it's very much still a slice of life a lot of the time, and because the characters are like, well, we're trapped, but let's not freak out. Let's try to keep our cool, and let's make the best of what we have. So they'll play games, they'll interact, they'll play jokes on each other, and they'll try to get to know each other. And in that regard, it makes the visual novel kind of pleasant, because when it does this, it helps you get to really know the characters. And in that way, you can actually care about the drama when it comes later. And that's quite honestly my favorite format of storytelling. I love that format of storytelling. I don't like it when drama just is all the time, because I feel like it can be entertaining, but if you don't care about the characters, I don't feel like the drama is as effective. So I really like the way this visual novel handled things. Yes, this means it is a little slow, and it can be a little boring, but the visual novel isn't that long. 20, 30 hours, maybe 40 if you're really slow. Slow, harsh. Okay, you need to take your time with reading a visual novel, or you really like to suck it in. And you know what? You might want to take your time reading this, because this is actually a really complex story, and there are little pieces here and there spread throughout all the routes and throughout the common route that kind of show that there's something going on behind the scenes, and you're really going to have to use your brain for this visual novel, because sometimes it will bring in sci-fi explanations that might be hard to understand, and And yeah, if you're not thinking, you might not get what they have, what the significance of those explanations is later in the plot. So you're really going to have to use your brain for this visual novel. And if you're just expecting a really easy read, I'm sorry, it's not really that. Like, it's not hard to read all the time, but at times you are going to have to do a little bit of thinking if you really want to appreciate this story. And some people, they're going to gobble that right up, and so did I. The best way I could describe it is it's a lot like the Steins Gate visual novel. In fact, I feel like it's very heavily influenced by, very heavily. Steins Gate is very heavily influenced by this visual novel, if you ask me. I know some people say that the actual spiritual successor of this is 999 and Zero Escape, but I have not played those. But as a whole, it does feel a lot like Steins Gate in the way that it handles slice of life scenes, and the way that it handles giving you sci-fi here and now and there. What am I even saying? But whatever. Just how the ending wraps everything up. I hope I didn't spoil too much just by saying that, but yeah, it really, I'll go into it later why I really think Steins Gate took a lot of hints on this game, but as a whole, yeah, obviously Steins Gate is my favorite visual novel, so I ate this one right up. Graphically, the game is a little underwhelming. I can't say the artwork is that great or anything. It's a little old. I mean, the game came out in like, what, 2001, 2002? It's pretty old, so it doesn't look that great. Some CGs look fine, and it's acceptable looking, but it's not that great, you know. I'm not saying that it's like Higurashi or Umineko bad, because that's too bad even for me, and I'm pretty accepting of art styles, but I will say that the graphics really aren't that great, and neither is the audio. And I'm not saying the music or the voice acting is bad, I'm just saying the audio itself is a little it's definitely not as professional as it could be. Like, a lot of the mics are not normalized properly, and it's not a huge deal, I'm kind of nitpicking here, but it can be a little annoying when one character's mic will be louder than the other character's, or one character's mic will be really quiet, or another character's mic, like Coco's mic, I think was full of noise, and I think Takashi's mic was full of noise while other characters didn't, and it can be a little jarring to listen to at times, quite honestly. It's not a huge deal. I mean, I guess it's because I'm a voice actor myself that I kind of recognize this stuff, so I don't think it'll bother everybody, but it can be a factor, and there's no way to turn the individual volumes of the characters up or down, which is a little bit of a shame. And it's nothing that other visual novels haven't done, but I just thought I'd let you know that it's not fantastic. On the music, it's good music. It is good. Some of the songs are pleasant to listen to. I don't feel like there's anything truly that memorable in here, but it does work with the setting, and it does work with the tone of the visual novel. It does get repetitive to listen to after 20, 30 hours of playtime, though. I mean, that's not a problem that other visual novels don't have, but I'm just letting you know that it's not the greatest soundtrack in the world. There's a few cool themes and all, but as a whole, it's probably not something you're gonna listen to on your free time. As a whole, how do I feel about this? How do I recommend this visual novel? If you like the Steins Gate anime, or if you've read the visual novel, then go at it. You'll probably love this. Maybe not as much, but I would say I could recommend it to people who like Steins Gate. If you really like it when a story is rather lighthearted most of the time, but then gets into drama later, you know, how a story might start out somewhat lighthearted and then get a little drama heavy later on, then it's for you guys too. And don't worry, this game does not take any cheap cop-outs. I will say that. It doesn't really. It's actually rather clever. So if you like clever stories, then this one's for you. Okay, I think I've kind of summarized the game without spoiling too much in that first part. So right now I'm going to go into spoiler territory. So if you do not want to hear this stuff or you need some motivation, well, if you don't want to hear this stuff, click off, or if you've already read the visual novel and you want to hear what my opinion on all the routes were, then stay tuned. Or if you need, kind of motivation to play the game, because some people need that, I wouldn't have watched School Days if I didn't know the ending. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people would have, but going into spoiler territory, so beware! The first route I played was Tsugumi, and right off the bat, I'm just gonna say this. I feel that Tsugumi is the strongest character in the game. She has the most layers to her, she has the most interesting kind of plot threads to her, she's probably the most developed character, and I feel like she has the most personality too. So, right off the bat, just saying, I think she has the best route overall, besides the ending route. And, Tsugumi initially comes off as very unfriendly, and sometimes she'll come off as quite psychotic, but you're not really sure why. And this creates a lot of intrigue. Later, you learn that Tsugumi has this thing that you're not sure what is causing it. Well, she explains it to you, but it's rather complex, and I don't think I can really explain it to you very well, but she has this cure virus, and what it does is it makes it so her skin rebuilds itself very fast or whatever, and she can heal herself from any wound, and she can basically live forever for the most part. I think she can live forever. I don't know if she's immortal, but she can. Her body will forever look young, is what happens, and this creates a lot of, she's not very happy about this, and because someone messed with her body or whatever, and she becomes very untrustworthy towards people, and it makes her just kind of act very unpleasant towards Takashi, the main character. And it's interesting to see this dynamic go on, because Takashi's trying to basically help her out or learn more about her, and she is very much opposed to this. She does not. She slowly does warm up to him, but she's pretty opposed to it. She doesn't feel like she can trust him. She doesn't feel like she can trust anyone, and that really, those kind of characters, they are going to have drama naturally that will make things a little more interesting. It's just instant entertainment right there. Maybe not the best. It depends on the execution, how good it is, but it's going to be instantly entertaining if you ask me. And overall, her route is good. And what's really, really good about it is the ending. The ending is beautiful. I love the ending. It's sad. But it's good, because what happens earlier in the route is they talk about this philosophy, and I can't remember the philosophy, but it has something to do with volumes and water, or maybe it doesn't even have any. Oh, God, I cannot remember what the exact philosophy is, or the law is, or whatever they talked about. And usually that's how the routes go in general, is they have this philosophy or law that gets introduced, and or this line of thought that gets introduced, and the ending will kind of go along with that. And it's really beautiful how it's done in the ending. It's a very sad ending where basically Takashi kind of has to die, but he saves Tsugumi in the process. And it's a little, it might be a little hard to see. I mean, it might hit you a little hard, and it might not be the most pleasant ending you were expecting, but the execution was very well done. The emotional impact was very effective, and it really makes you like Takashi's character a lot more, because previously, before this, he's kind of being a little unpleasant because he's kind of getting irritated and stuff with not being able to find a way out, and they're all really worried about not being able to find a way out. But yeah, overall, I really feel like this is just a good route. Tsugumi is well developed. Takashi is well developed in this route. You get to learn enough about both characters. They're very well fleshed out, and they're both interesting, and their dynamic is interesting, and their romance is pretty good. I would have preferred if they spent a little more time on the romance, but it's still pretty dang good. It's hard to really complain about this route. I know I'm not really speaking that much about this route, but it's hard to complain about it. It's really just hard to complain about it. It's a good route. There's really nothing to say about it. The drama was good. The characters were good. It's basically what you want in a visual novel, and it does have an impact to it. So it's definitely well above average for a visual novel route. Well above. It's great. And there's really no complaints here. The second route I played was Sora. Before I talk about Sora's route, I'm going to tell you about the problem with the way this game is set up. Whether you're playing as Takashi or the kid, you're going to run into the same problem both times. The problem is, in most visual novels, the common route happens kind of universally, and then you'll have scenes that you can choose on choices that'll happen in between, like say you go back and do another girl and you'll choose scenes and you'll see scenes with her, but then you'll actually get on her route by the end and everything will change after that point. But that's not really, that is sorta how Ever17 works, but not completely. The problem is the only thing that's, like, you'll see all those scenes when you go back and choose choices, but the common route is still going on. You never truly get on, like, a Sora route until the very, very last 30 minutes, you know? My problem with that is that the common route, you'll be doing all this constant skipping of the dialogue and all that, and so it won't flow well together. Because you'll go back to the beginning, do Sora scenes, skip the dialogue, see another Sora scene, skip the dialogue, and you'll do that all the way to the last 30 minutes rather than getting on a route that's maybe 4 or 5 hours long, long, that's completely unique to Sora. And I don't feel like that was a wise choice, because I don't feel like it makes it flow well together. I can see why they did it, but I don't feel like it's a wise choice. And this is a problem with the kids' route. So basically, whoever your first route is who it's going to. That's how it's going to flow better that way. Unless you really feel like rereading the common route dialogue, in which case I think that just gets repetitive. But now on to Sora's route. Sora is initially. Some people say that her route is rather boring, but I don't see that. Maybe it's slower paced than the other routes, or maybe it's just because if you played Tsugumi's first, she doesn't seem quite as dynamic as a character. But when you factor in that Takashi is essentially falling in love with a hologram, to me, that's really interesting. To some people, that might seem really weird, and it kind of is weird, and that's what makes it interesting. You know, I don't want plain stuff, I want interesting stuff when I read a story. And, yeah, it's kind of funny that the hologram is falling in love with him, and you know what I think this game does a really good job is it does a good job of making you like Sora, and it's kind of like it will create a conflict with the player. And it's like, well, I like her, but she's just a hologram for a lot of players, and some players will probably be like, oh, I like her, but she's a hologram, or something like that. And that's it's a conflict for Takashi too, and I thought that was really interesting. And Sora actually has a conflict with herself in this route, and that's really good too, if you ask me. And once again, there's another philosophy introduced, and it's about, I forgot which god, goddess, or whatever, but they talk about how this builder would make was making a painting or a statue or something, and he fell in love with the statue, and so a goddess or god granted the builder I forgot the name, but granted the guy a miracle, and the statue came to life. And basically that's kind of how the ending plays out for this is, well, Sora doesn't essentially come to life until the very, very end, but you know, that he's saying, you get this sense of sympathy for Takashi because, you know, Sora's not actually real, but she's conflicted because she wants to be real. And it's kind of a little bit of a Pinocchio story in a way, but it's done really well. And just like Tsukumi's ending, the ending is really beautiful. Sad once again because Takashi essentially drowns to death, of course, again. But it's really beautiful because it's bittersweet because it's like they finally recuperated their love and they accepted that they loved each other. But of course, you know, they had to do it when Lemieux was drowning, and that's a little bit of a downer once again. But I don't have a problem with downer endings as long as they're not just being downers to be unpleasant, and they're downer endings to be, you know, show a message. And I really think this one delivered a powerful message. And quite honestly, much like Tsukumi's route, I don't really have much to complain here. Other than the way the common route structure is done, that's my only real complaint when I was playing through this route, is because I would do a Sora scene, skip a bunch, and it just wouldn't flow very well together. Yes, I could have reread, but I really don't like doing that. Also, another thing that's introduced in Sora's route that you might be, that's kind of introduced throughout the game, is she kind of gives you this concept of how you would view things from a fourth or perspective or something, or a 4D perspective, or something like that. And these are actual little hints towards the end that basically, to me, it was always just, when I was playing the game, I just assumed that they were trying to make it seem like, oh, the player is actually involved in the story, like the player, the person, you playing the game, were actually involved in the story somewhat. Like, yes, you are, but like they were doing it without breaking the fourth wall. And that's essentially what they did in the end, too, and it was kind of really clever. And this builds up even more in Yu's route, and not as much in Sarah's route, but we'll get into that when we get to the ending. And I just want to say that Sora's route was where I thought, this is probably going to be a plot point somewhere. The next route I played was Yu, and when you play Yu's route, you essentially play as the kid from Takashi's route, the Amnesia Kid, or so you think. And forgot to mention him. But there's this kid, along with the rest of them, that has amnesia. He can't remember his name. And in Takashi's route, he's not really the most hopeful person. I guess you could call him a little emo. I really don't like using that word, but he's not too confident in the situation or in himself. And that is your hint when you play this kid's route. Because when you play him, he doesn't seem like that kid from Takashi's route. Something seems up. He seems a lot more confident and a lot more thoughtful than the kid from that route. And it's like, something must be up. But once again, we'll go into that later. And but for Yu's route, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really care for this route. I didn't really think it was that great. It was a good, because Yu's route, what it does is it serves as a puzzle piece to the solution at the end. But I don't really feel like it stands on its own. I don't feel like it's that interesting. It has some interesting sci-fi concepts, has some interesting philosophy, but as a character and as a romance between you and the kid, I just don't feel like it was that good in comparison. And I feel the same as Sarah's route, unfortunately, but it's not that Yu's route is bad. I'm not saying that. It just, she doesn't feel that complex. She doesn't feel that interesting. She feels like, this felt like a heroine route in an average visual novel, really. I mean, her problem is that she wants to find out about her father, and her mother was obviously keeping stuff from her, and she wants to figure out all about that. And to me, that's kind of like a, it doesn't really delve that deep into the problem, so and that's really her only conflict quite honestly. So her character just feels kind of average, because she's really just this energetic girl otherwise. I mean, don't get me wrong, Yu is likable and all that stuff, but I don't feel like her character, she wasn't that interesting. It's a nice puzzle piece route, and it's important, but it doesn't stand on its own. And the ending is very happy in comparison to Takashi's ending, which is another hint. I don't mind that, but I don't feel like the ending was powerful at all in comparison. And it's not like I have something against happy endings, because I love the real ending to this game. I thought that's great. It's just, this ending felt a little shallow in comparison. It's not bad, but it doesn't make much impact, if you ask me. I would say the one advantage of Yu's route is it does feel a little, I want to say it's a little better paced than some of Takashi's routes, but that's about it. That's the only thing good I could say that I would say is great about it. But other than that, I wasn't fully that interested in their relationship. I wasn't fully interested in her character, and I wasn't really that into the problem. I was more interested in how this connects to the plot as a whole, and I don't think that's a good idea, because that means it won't stand by itself. The fourth route I played was Sarah, and quite honestly, I feel like this is the weakest route in the game by far. And the reason for that is it does have some interesting plot threads. You realize that Sarah is actually the kid that you're playing as, their brother and sister, when you actually feel like there's a possibility there's romance going to be between them, but no, it's not romance, it's just their brother and sister, which is fine. I'm totally cool with that. And it's the thing about it that's disappointed me with Sarah's route is Sarah seemed like this quirky character that could be really interesting if they went really in depth with her, but I feel like that was all there was to her, just this quirky character and not really much else. She doesn't really have that many layers to her. She's not as complex. See, the problem was Tsugumi and Sora, I felt like they had a lot of layers and they were really complex, especially Tsugumi. And when you go to Sarah, someone like Sarah, it's just really underwhelming in comparison. Don't get me wrong, like Yu's route, I thought that the plot points were interesting. But as a character as a whole, she can't stand on her own to me. They don't focus enough on her. They needed the route needed to be longer, and they needed to really give her more depth, but they didn't. And as such, she was very underwhelming. Like, her drama is just not that interesting, quite honestly. Like, there's interesting stuff surrounding her, much like you, but as a character, they needed to put more time into her, like they did with Tsugumi and Sora. I almost felt like they put all this time into Takashi, Tsugumi, and Sora, and they didn't spend that much time on Sarah or Yu. And that's okay, I guess, because I guess they were trying to put time into the kid himself, and I guess the kid does get decent development in both routes, and he has some interesting lines of thought, and he's a decent character, but it's not enough when you're, have a route dedicated to a heroine. You need to do a little more. And as a whole, and the ending is once again a happy one. It doesn't resolve everything though, but and once again, much like Yu's, it doesn't have any impact to me. It's just kind of, ooh, happy, and that's about it. It's like, yay, we're a brother and sister and we're gonna run away, yay! It's just, no, that's not enough. That's not enough to create an impact, but I guess, once again, like Yu's, it serves as a plot thread, but the route does not stand on its own. That's really all there is. There's really not much to say about Sarah's route. I felt like it was really short, actually. I was like, I really thought there would be a lot more to it than this, but there's really not. There's not a lot of depth here. Now, the final route, which is Coco's route, or not really an accurate term for the route, it's actually Winkle's route, but we'll call it Coco's route because that's just easier to say. And it's the route that ties everything together. And it's the route that really makes this game great. Because without this route, the game just wouldn't... It would be good, but it wouldn't be that good. This is what makes the game just fantastic, really clever. What happens in this route is you're revealed a lot of things. You're revealed at first. It just plays out like a normal common route, but something is going on, and you the player probably have been piecing together things yourself by this point. But one thing happens that makes things really interesting, and that's that when you're playing on the kid's side, because you're playing on the as the kid first, or most people should. But when you're playing on the kid's side, what happens is you look in the mirror and you realize you're not the kid. You're not the same kid that was in Takashi's route, and that really brings a lot of puzzling thoughts to the mind. It's like, what's going on here? And a lot of other things happen too. Somehow Coco, the pink-haired girl, is communicating between both worlds. Like, she's in one route, but she's communicating to the kid in his route. And so you're like, what is going on? Is there two timelines, or is there... Well, obviously, there has to be multiple timelines, because they tell you at the end of every route that you're stuck in an infinity route. Infinity loop. And just all these questions arise. I mean, you later figure out that the kid that you're playing as in the kid's route, yes, you see what happens in the final route is Takashi, they'll switch from Takashi's perspective to the kid's perspective. And later the kid learns that because he has amnesia, his name is Hokuto. But he doesn't think that's his name. He's like, that's not my name. I don't feel like that's my name. And it just creates all these questions, and a lot of drama happens, and it's just so good. But trying to explain it is difficult. So if I lose you, I'm sorry. It's really hard to explain this route without, just saying everything in a really long-winded way. But then you learn that Tsugumi is actually Hokuto and Sarah's mother. And now you know something is up. This is when you know something is up, and I really like this part of the game. It might be my favorite part of the game, but you learn that Tsugumi you learn that this is not the same time period as the Takashi with Coco and gang, and the Takashi that's with them in the Hokuto's route is not the same Takashi as the one. Obviously not. So you learn that after that first route, where that first ending where Takashi died from drowning, that Tsugumi actually had two kids because they had sex before they did that whole thing. And she had two twins, both Sarah and Hokuto, that were fraternal twins. And that's how they explain why Hokuto is very athletic or something, and Sarah is very mathematically inclined, but he is not. And you learn that basically she's been running away, living a really rough life, and that's why she had to abandon them at a nursery. Well, not a nursery care, I would say, but at a place. So because she couldn't take care of them, and she thought it would be miserable. And yeah, just all these plot threads are coming together all at once. And it's you learn, because you learn that you're just wondering what the heck is going on here. Why is everything happening the same way that it happened 19 years ago, according to you? Or I think it was 19 years, but quite a while ago, according to you. And you're like, wait a minute, how does this you look the same as the one that was from the Takashi route? How do they look exactly the same? And what happened at the end of Takashi's route is you gets the cure virus that Tsugumi has. Oh, well, okay, that's not why they look similar, but I'll tell you this anyway. But you gets this cure virus that Tsugumi has, and that's how she's able to build her body again, and that's how she's able to survive because she had a heart condition before, and how she's able to basically still look young despite being probably in her 40s or late 30s. And the reason that Hokuto's route looks the same as the Yu from Takashi's route is because the fact that the Yu from... Yeah, this is getting really confusing, I know. See, this game is just so confusing. But the Yu from Takashi's route is actually kind of cloned herself in a way, and made... because she felt like she wouldn't get to live long because she had a heart condition, so she wanted to make sure that she got that there was something left of her in the world, and that's how the Yu from Hokuto's route was created. So they're not the same person. They might act exactly the same, but they're not the same person. And yeah, it's crazy. All this stuff is happening, and you're like, well, what is the point of all of this? Why is all this happening? Like, why is there two routes? Why did they repeat the same accident? Because this game is really, really clever. It tricks you into thinking that they happen, that you're just seeing a different perspective, but you're not. You're not seeing a different perspective. It actually is just a trickery to the player that the two timelines are actually the same, and that was the goal. See, what happens is... God, explaining this is crazy, but the Yu from Takashi's route, he planned with Ryogo, which is the kid from Takashi's route, that this same incident would happen again. That way, they could trick Blickwinkle. Who is Blickwinkle? Blickwinkle, the best way to describe him is he's a metaphor for the player. You know, he's someone who can see all the timelines. He can see all their perspectives. He can, you know, just go all over the place. They wanted to interest him enough to and trick him into seeing this. And he really is just a metaphor for the player. And because he can see all the perspectives, he can actually inform the actions to the other players, and to the people in both timelines. It's very confusing. It's very, very confusing, but it works. I'm sure there's some holes here and there, but it works, and I'll try to keep on going. Yeah, explaining this route is crazy. It is crazy. I mean, it's such a crazy route, as people might say, oh, you're playing the game for this route, and which I wouldn't say that's necessarily true, but it kinda is with this game. So I'm a little confused, but I guess Blickwinkle thought he was actually Hokuto when he was not. That's why he said that Hokuto is not my name, but he was taking the perspective of Hokuto, and that's why he thought that it wasn't his name, because it was actually someone else. And why do they need to summon Blickwinkle in the first place? Why do they need to trick him? They need to trick him. They need to grab his interest so they can save Takashi and Koko. Because what happens is, at the end of Takashi's route, I guess, even though, the end of Tsugumi's initial route, when he drowned before, I guess he didn't actually drown, because the Cure virus managed to recover him and make him survive underwater. Yeah. And I don't know how much I buy that, but whatever. I guess it really is that effective. And he goes back into Lemieux afterwards and realizes that Koko's still on board. And yeah, I keep on losing it's so confusing. He finds Koko and has to put her in a regenerative chamber, or a frozen, kind of like a frozen sleep chamber, and he has to keep her there while they both heal up. Like, he has to stay there too, because they can't really get out from where they are. The Cure virus is with them, so they're able to heal properly, but they're not able to get out. Now, the question that was asked is, why can't we just save them beforehand? Why can't we just inform the people who got out in Takashi's route that they're just there? The reason is because... And Takashi's, if they got him out before that, then Hokuto then Blickwinkle would have never had gotten all that other stuff needed to actually be summoned in the first place, because he needed to be tricked to actually be summoned. And if he was never tricked, he would have never been able to get Takashi out. So the way they do this is they go back to the current timeline, and since Takashi and Coco are still under water at the bottom of Lemieux, Blickwinkle takes the kid's Hokuto's perspective again, and I guess since he has the cure virus too, he's able to do this. He dives into the water, manages to get to where Coco and Takashi are, and is able to wake them up, and they look exactly the same as they used to be. Because the cure virus, the regenerative sleep along with the cure virus, I don't know what I'm talking about, I know. But, and they're able to save him that way. And Takashi, it's really funny because Takashi's like, oh, how long have I been asleep? Oh, like 14 to 19 years. Oh my god, what the heck? And everything is resolved after that. And it's a really silly, happy ending. And yeah, as I told you time and time again, it's really complex. But the main point of the ending is to show you that, hey, it's kind of like this. Blickwinkle, like I said before, is a metaphor for the player. It's like, why would he be interested? Well, you, the player, are interested in reading this story. And if you read this story, you yourself got tricked that they're both the same timeline, it's kind of like that. I know it's confusing. I know I'm not explaining it well, but that's just the nature of the ending. It's a really convoluted ending that I quite frankly love. I eat this stuff up. And of course, if you've seen Steins Gate, you realize this is what Steins Gate's ending is based off of. It's very, very similar. Now, are there holes? And is there other things? Yes, of course. There probably is. There's probably plenty of holes you could point out. But I don't think that's necessary. I think when you try to nitpick for plot holes, you're doing too much. Because it's just not necessary. Yes, you could probably find a few holes that might make the story not work anymore, but it's all about trying to entertain and try to put together the parts they tried to give you before. And this is one of those games where you really might get more out of it once you read it a second time. And I don't know if I'd be completely willing to do this. Yes, it's a good game, but it's to me, Coco's route was very entertaining, but I don't know if I'd be willing to read it all over again. It's kind of long, for one thing. Well, visual novels in general are kind of long. And I don't know. I even though I say it's great, it's good, I don't know if I care to read it a second time. I don't know why I don't like it as much as a whole. I wouldn't say I like it as much as other great visual novels that like Muv-Luv Alternative, like Steins Gate and stuff. I guess it's because I feel like the characters really aren't that fantastic. They're okay. They're a likable bunch. But I wouldn't, other than Tsugumi, I don't really feel like they stand out too much. They're okay, but I can't say I find them that memorable. I'm sure most people don't have a problem with them, but that's just me. That's why I can't personally feel the need to reread it. As a whole, it's so clever how they go about tricking the player. To me, this was what the whole game was all about anyway. It was all about tricking the player and stuff, not tricking Blickwinkle. I didn't know they would actually bring a concept like Blickwinkle into the plot. Like, I thought they were actually just trying to bring the player into the plot, but they actually personified the player, which is what I think is great. And yeah, and I know I didn't explain it very well. I know I didn't. I'm sorry. It's hard to explain. I even if I love Steins Gate, once I do a review of that, it's going to be hard for me to explain that too. So forgive me. But the main thing you should take out of it is it does take all four routes and it does blend them all pretty well together, and it gives you a very satisfying conclusion, I find. The ending is very happy-go-lucky, and I still like it, so I'm not against happy endings. If I feel like, well, you know, I didn't feel like they cop out. They did a cop out by saving Takashi. I really, like, maybe a little bit, but it wasn't a bad cop out. There is good and bad cop outs. I felt like they gave a clever reason and a clever way around it, so, you know, it's not as bad as other games, like the one I'm playing right now, but I'll get into that later. And as a whole, Ever17 is good. I can see the appeal. I can see why people hold it in such high regard. Yeah, I really do recommend this game for people who like complex stories. It works, you know, I kind of wish, you know, Rewrite was given the same love. I know I was really harsh on my Rewrite review, and I do like it more than I was letting on, and I actually don't regret reading it anymore, but I wish they had put as much thought into the Rewrite that they put into Ever17, and this game is like 8 years. Oh, well, it doesn't matter when it was made, but as a whole, good game. Is there anything else I would like to say? Not really. I think that's about it. That sums up the game well. It gives a satisfying tale, has decently likable characters, has some it has some very interesting twist here and there, and it, as a whole, is worth your time. It really is. It's not too long. I know I said it's long, but it's not that long. So, as a whole, it's worth your time. Give it a shot.